we always sing with Randa. We always all mute ourselves except Randa, and so that we can sing with her as a way of kind of grounding ourselves and tuning our bodies before we maybe hear some difficult things, face some things together. So, but before that, I want to suggest another way to tune our bodies and our breath, and it's this. We're going to take 3 slow, deep breaths. And so when you take the first breath, and you can start muting yourself now if you want. When you take the first breath, or when you take the deep breaths, just let the slow, deep breath sort of calm you and ground you. But then when you blow it out, can we imagine that we are blowing out all of these fires on the West Coast? Okay? Okay. Deep breath. Deep breath. Deep breath. Yeah, and maybe blowing out some of these fires of hate. Okay, Randa, go right ahead.
Okay, today we're just going to sing a little more slowly than usual and just give it your all. Find that place in you to just hang on to this. The lyrics, there are 2, let's see. Yes. Okay. Justice Land is where we're going, even though it might say freedom. Ain't gonna let nobody turn us around, turn us around, turn us around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. We're gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to justice land. Ain't gonna let no fear turn us around, turn us around, turn us around. Ain't gonna let no fear turn us around. We're gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to justice land. Ain't gonna let no heartbreak turn us around, turn us around, turn us around. Ain't gonna let no heartbreak turn us around. We're gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to justice land. One more time. Ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. Nobody turn us around. Turn us around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. We're gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to justice land.
Thank you, Randa. Thank you, everyone. So beautiful to see you all. Welcome to Tuesdays with Tillis, week number 190. We are a community of nonviolent resistance. I feel our determination is getting stronger over time, and I really appreciate everyone being here. We had a beautiful Ready the Ground training. We had 37 people at our Ready the Ground training on Saturday. And in your letter from Jewel today with the Zoom link, there are the links to register for the 3 George Lakey trainings on the 17th and then the 23rd and 30th. And those are going to fill up, I think. Today, today I made up the topic. Is it time to use the F word yet? And there are a lot of F words. The one I was thinking in particular was fascism, of course, but there are other F words, and fire is one of them. And I didn't want there to be another week going by without us talking about the fires on the West Coast. Before we do that, anybody here for the very first time? Can you raise your hand? Welcome, Roseanne. Welcome, welcome. Welcome. If you would like to be on our mailing list and get the Zoom link every Tuesday morning, you can just put your email in the chat. Anybody else here for the first time? Okay, great. Great. So I'm so grateful to our climate crisis team for responding to kind of a last minute realization that we really just have to have someone talk about the fires today. What I'm thinking about today, because there are so many F words and all of them are so relevant, is that this whole first half, we can talk about really urgent things that we feel like everybody needs to know about. So what do I know that everyone needs to know? That's the first half. And then in the second half, a little bit about what can we do about it? And we've only booked one speaker, and our speaker, I'm so honored, he's one of us. He's here every week, but he's really qualified to talk to us about the fires. And that is John McDonald, who's going to talk to us about the fires. He graduated from Duke's Nicholas School of the Environment with a master's in environmental management. And he has been an environmental science professor for many years. And I really thank him for stepping up to talk to us, because no one's more qualified to do that. So take it away, John.
All right. Thanks, Karen. Apologies if this is a little scattershot today, because I just found out about this yesterday in my 48 hours home before traveling out to Los Angeles tomorrow. Not looking forward to that, but whatever. So obviously, I'm pretty sure everyone here has seen the images, the devastating images from the fires out west. I mean, last week, seeing red and orange skies in California. I have a cousin who lives in Alameda, was texting me pictures where the streetlights were on all day because it was so dark. You could not see the sun come through. And he has two little boys and had to keep them in the house. And even in the house, he said it was pretty smoky in there. So they're stressed out trying to figure out how to stay healthy. There are currently dozens of wildfires that are spread throughout the western states. In California alone, there's a chunk of land the size of the state of Connecticut, over 3 million acres, that has burned. 6 of the 20 largest wildfires we've ever seen in California have happened just in the last few weeks. Oregon has about 500,000 people under evacuation orders. They've seen close to 1 million acres of their own lands burned. I think the death count right now, the immediate death count, is about 36. And obviously countless people's homes and businesses and farms and such have been destroyed in these fires. And even for the people who aren't in immediate danger of the fire, the health hazards posed by the smoke that's now blowing through the entire western half of the United States. It's, in fact, the smoke has reached the eastern half. If you see these satellite images, smoke from the West Coast has gone up into Canada and all the way into the Northeast. And the particulate matter pollution coming from these wildfires can be characterized in some cases, in some places in California, as the worst air quality in the world right now. And they're in this dilemma where they need winds to blow the smoke away, but they also don't want winds to exacerbate the problem and spread the fires. In fact, I read an article that was saying that it's very likely that they're not going to get relief from the smoke until next month. So another couple of weeks. Some areas might see it clean out, but there are other areas where this is going to persist now for a couple of more weeks. And add to that, in a very 2020 fashion, the fact that we're dealing with a pandemic disease that oh yeah, attacks the respiratory system, and we're going to further impact people's respiratory systems by having them breathe this completely unhealthy air. So this year has just been a doozy, and it continues. Yeah, it means you've seen, I was reading that some airlines, I think Alaska Airlines was one of them, that suspended their services into Portland and Spokane because the air quality was just so bad. And it's not an isolated incident. Remember that, before we learned that 2020 was going to be the year of the coronavirus, we started this year with these massive wildfires in Australia, and we're all familiar with the devastating images of all the adorable koalas and wallabies and kangaroos that lost their homes and were killed or injured. And so this is certainly not an isolated incident. And even though we have all this attention on the wildfires out west, the Pantanal region of Brazil and South America is now on fire. That's the largest wetland in the world. And I think there have been a lot of predictions that the U.S. West was going to burn, partly due to climate change. But I don't think that anyone had Pantanal fires on their 2020 bingo card. So that's obviously really devastating. It's we're just going to see more and more of this unless we're able to act quickly. I want to talk for a bit about the cause of the fires, because there's been a lot of discussion about that, especially in the last 24 hours as Donald Trump made his visit to California. And there's been this discussion of, is it climate change or is it forest management? And I think in studying ecology, one of the things you learn is that, when you're looking for cause and effect, it's often not just one cause leading to one effect. The causes are often multiple. There are things that could be playing into the spread of these wildfires, like invasive species. There are invasive plants that have taken over for native vegetation in California that are more prone to burning. And that can certainly accelerate fire spread in those communities. Or places in Colorado where pine beetles and other insects have infested and killed off large swaths of forest. Obviously, dead trees are going to burn a lot easier than live trees would. So there are a lot of things like that that can play into this. But in terms of the debate that's on hand about forest management and climate change, Trump has taken some kernel of truth about the impact that forest management can have on spread of fires. And there is some. As we build communities in these habitats, as we take over forest lands, cut them down, and build our own communities and towns and cities in there, we start to impose our will on these areas. And one of them is that we try to scale back the amount of burning that happens in these forests. Fire is a natural part of all ecosystems. It replenishes ecosystems. If we think about where we are right now, what's behind me was probably longleaf pine forest 500 years ago. Longleaf pine has fires that come through every 3 years that replenish. They get rid of woody vegetation, but they're ground fires that burn at low temperatures, and they don't reach the crown. What we're seeing out west are fires that get up into the crowns, get up into the canopies, and those are able to jump over fire breaks like highways and rivers and lakes, especially when aided by winds. And so when we suppress fires because we don't want them to affect our communities, you can have decades and decades of buildup of woody vegetation and old dead trees that, when there's a spark, be it a lightning storm or a gender reveal party smoke bomb, it can hit this, and it becomes like tinder, and it spreads. So there is some truth to what Trump's saying, but in trying to say that the problem is with forest management, he's obviously not acknowledging the elephant in the room, which is climate change. California has seen intense drought and intense heat over the last couple of months. We know that it reached 130 degrees in Death Valley just recently. It was 100 degrees in San Francisco, and anyone who's spent time in San Francisco, even in the middle of the summer, knows that that's a very unusual thing. And with these hot and dry conditions that we've had out there, it's provided the perfect spark for these fires. The jet stream's been weakening, so these weather systems don't just move on, they persist. And it's one of the reasons we're saying, oh yeah, and of course now we have 5 cyclonic storms in the Atlantic too, as we're in a La Nina phase of our weather systems, and that tends to bring drier weather out to the West Coast. So, yeah, there is no doubt that climate change is a big and leading factor of these. Yes, some forest management practices that thin out the forest could help. It's not, as Trump suggested, raking leaves in the forest, but we could get rid of some woody vegetation. But again, think about the scale of these forests. We're talking about the size of Connecticut is burning in California. Managing that amount of forests is going to take a lot of effort and a lot of resources. Also, Trump's quick to blame California for the fire, and we saw this in the Paradise Fire. We've seen this in every fire that's happened out there since he took office. Yet, 57% of the forested land in California comes under federal protection. It's not state land, so that would be sort of his bailiwick to manage the forests out there. And obviously, that's not the case. So, yes, fires can be mitigated if we take care of them. If we have some aggressive management practices to thin them, to remove woody vegetation, to have prescribed burns. Prescribed burns can be difficult in areas that we've built into, where we can control the fires and keep them as ground fires and get rid of all that fuel. But there are challenges. It's not as easy as he makes it seem. So yesterday, you may have heard when Trump was meeting with California officials, including Gavin Newsom, when pressed about climate change, he said, "It'll all start getting cooler, just you watch." You know, we've heard this refrain before. I think coronavirus was supposed to go away by the spring. It's a miracle, right? So, you know, his attention to detail with science is obviously pretty faulty. When then pressed, and then he would say, well, you know, he was pressed on that and said, hey, well, the science doesn't really agree with you here. The science is saying that climate change is persistent and going to get worse. And then, of course, his response to that is, I don't think that science knows. So, of course, yesterday in a speech, Joe Biden called out Trump and he called him a climate arsonist, which is an appropriate, moniker for him. So as far as what we can do, I think like everything that we've talked about here over the weeks, months, years, it really comes down to what we can do between now and November and making a change, you know, not only in the White House, but in the Senate, and you know, in state houses too, all across the country. And, you know, if we want to make California's skies less orange, we probably also need to make the White House less orange. And, you know, and then that's so the first step. Beyond that, we have to push these candidates to go further in their climate proposals. And we really need, you know, we've run out of time. We need bold, aggressive legislation. So if we're so fortunate to have a President Biden, if we're so fortunate to have a Senator Cunningham, we really need to hold their feet to the actual fire that's burning out there and make sure that we get, big, bold plans on this. We have to remember too, like Joe Manchin's one of the Democratic senators. So 50 senators isn't going to cut it when it comes to something like the Green New Deal or any kind of legislation approaching that. And I think that finally, the last sort of take home point, and this is something that I usually tell my students on the last day of class, as far as what you can do as a normal citizen to help in any environmental prospects, but especially environmental climate change prospects, is to have the difficult conversations and learn to speak about climate change. I think a lot of people get intimidated because there is a lot of science, and that might not be your bailiwick, and you might not feel comfortable talking about it. I think a lot of the data that's come out shows that really people who speak about climate change in real terms without getting too granular into the science of it might be more effective than someone like me who would tend to present a bunch of charts and graphs and things like that. Those don't really sway opinions. But we have this really strong opportunity. How can the images from California that we've seen, these orange and pink and red skies, how can that not sway opinion? So I think there's an opportunity to start shifting the focus. And in doing so, like I always do, I always give my students homework at the end. I'll post, for those of you who want to become more familiar or learn a little bit more about climate science, I have a link. I'm a podcast guy, listen to a ton of podcasts. I'll post a bunch of links. There's some fantastic climate podcasts out there. They all have different tones. They focus on different things. One of them this last season, called No Place Like Home, has been very spiritual. One of them, a new one called How to Save a Planet, is very hopeful. It's talking about actual solutions. There's a whole bunch of them, and I'll post those. There's also, if you really want to get into it, a great course offered by the SDG Academy and Michael Mann, who's a professor from Penn State, who's been one of the leading voices on climate. And it's a great course. I've taken a lot of his material and incorporated it into my courses, but I'll post a link for that as well. So really, it's, do what we can through November, continue to push these candidates, and continue to learn and continue the conversation, have these difficult conversations. And one other thing, one other leading voice in this is Catherine Hayhoe, who's a professor at Texas Tech, and she is a fantastic communicator about climate science. And she also teaches people how to best have conversations that can change people's opinions. It's one of the hardest things that we can do, since so much of this has become politicized. And she has some wonderful perspectives on that. And I've used some of that in my class, and had some students who are conservative leaning who left my class wanting to ban fracking and things like that. So it can work. It's hard work, but I think it's also necessary work, and something that we all should strive for in the weeks, months, and years to come. So thanks.
Wow. Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much. That was amazing. On such short notice, it was perfect. Could you take a few questions or comments?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. On the news today, there was an interview with a family who had lived in Paradise, California. And then they moved to an area that is now burning, and they've lost everything again.
Oh my goodness.
And they were asked, well, why did you move there? And it was an affordable location for them. That was the same question that was asked of people in New Orleans with Katrina. Well, why do you live there? People just can't just up and say, I'm going to move to the most ideal place. I thought that was a heartless comment to ask this family, and I think they had 5 children.
Wow.
I just wanted to, I saw Michael's comment in the chat about rebuilding after the fire and the effects on the economy. And I think that's an important point, because when faced with pushback on something like the Green New Deal, that we always hear, how are we going to pay for it? The economics of this, we can't afford not to pay for it, right? We see the devastation that this is causing, and if we can't sustain this kind of damage, so we can't talk about the economics of it without really getting into the cost and benefit and understanding how drastic the costs are of inaction. And that's something that I think often gets overlooked in these discussions.
I lived in Washington State during Mount St. Helens blow up, and the land, they said, they were saying, oh, this will always be arid, it will never be anything else, but it came back in about 5 years. And so I'm wondering, how long do you think it would take for these areas in California and Oregon to return to fertile areas?
They would, I don't think, I think they would, you would see vegetation growth in normal situations fairly quickly. The question is going to be then the excessive drought, the excessive heat, what we're seeing in climate does, because a forest that's burned now is going to lose its capacity to hold water. And it's when we add the confounding factors of climate change, yeah, some of these forests might struggle to revive. They may have done that a lot easier, 20, 30, 40 years ago, but
Yeah.
but right now that remains to be seen, is how well these forests are able to rebound. Remember, some of these areas are really arid areas that we're making even hotter and drier right now. So that is a really good question. Some of the areas in Washington and Oregon, the climate's a little wetter, where you can expect to see some regrowth, but that is going to be an interesting thing to see as we go forward.
John, this is Karen. I read an article from Colorado, and they, because Colorado's having these terrible fires also, and they said that basically some of the forests won't grow back, some of the trees won't come back because of climate change. So there's going to be like a lower growth, like some of the oaks and maples might grow back, but some of the other trees won't. So because of climate change, some of these things won't come back. The forest will never be the same again.
Oh, very.
Yeah. And
very
then as a bird watcher, of course, my heart is just breaking from all the habitat and the birds, how many have died. And I saw an article from New Mexico yesterday. Did anyone see this? That like they're finding like thousands of birds dying, and like they're acting kind of sleepy, kind of tired just before, and then they're just dying. There's like thousands of birds dying. And so this is one of the universities in New Mexico is evaluating this, and they're thinking it might be because right now it's fall bird migration. So birds are leaving and migrating, right? So some of them might have had to leave where they were breeding too early, so they weren't like all fattened up and everything before their long journey. So that's one of the hypotheses that they had to leave the fire, because of the fire. So, but there's thousands of birds dying in New Mexico.
Thank you, John, and thank you all so much. So many of you have been climate activists and environmental activists for many years. And I really thank you for all that you've studied and learned and are able to share with us, and all the organization that you've done. And I feel like increasingly our hearts are breaking, and we are moving, trying to do everything that we can. I think that we're all trying to work on the election, and it really does. Everything seems to point to, we just have to get different people in the White House, in Raleigh. We have to get a new Senate. I actually listened to a podcast about the energy corporations with Chris Hayes. Why is this happening? And it was really excellent because it linked the corruption in the energy companies and the waste of money with these coal plants that haven't been profitable for years. And so it's all connected. It's all connected. So when we get these assholes out, there really is some hope, because this woman was saying, and she wrote a book about it, that Biden's plan is actually pretty good. We just have to get him in there so he can get it started, and we can press him on maybe improving it. Anyone have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, Karen, that was an excellent podcast. Leah Stokes was his guest on that interview.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So we can keep returning to this subject. I want to thank John again and Karen, and really lift up these amazing climate activists, Maple and Lib, and so many of you who really dedicate yourself to the environment. But I'm going to open it up because so much has been happening. We're going to return at least a little bit to the fires next week, but I think things are moving so quickly that we're probably going to have to do a whole bunch of things next week too. So I'm just going to open it up to what people feel is most pressing to tell everyone else about. Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, so I posted in the chat, there's a link to a thing called Ballot Tracks. And so if you've requested an absentee ballot, you can see the status of where your request is. So if they've received your request, if they've mailed you a ballot and what date it was mailed, when you fill it out and you return it, you can see that it's been received, and then whether it's been accepted by the Board of Elections. So you can follow the status. I put that link in the chat.
That's great. And when will they start counting the absentee ballots?
They're going to start on September 29th to start summing them up. They won't obviously broadcast anything, but they will start processing them at the end of September. So they're kind of expecting by the time, they were saying in the interview yesterday that people get it back quickly. And if 50, and they've sent out, they have a request for 800 or so absentee ballots. So if those people get those back and about 50% go to early voting, there'll be a big chunk of votes that will already be done by November 3rd. So they're looking forward to being able to process and keep up pretty well.
Thank you.
I heard Josh Stein the other night, and as to what Mark said, I've changed my mind on. I'm gonna do a mail-in and drop it off at the Board of Elections because apparently those are going to be in the count on November 3rd.
Yes, we did that in Hillsborough as well in Orange County, and it really was very, very easy. It's very well organized, and
those of you who requested ballots, are you receiving them?
Yes, I got mine the day after it was sent out. So I think it started a week ago Friday, and I got mine on Saturday.
We're still waiting, and I was in on August the 7th in Wake County. We delivered our request in person, and we have not yet received a ballot, although I called the Board of Election and they said our ballots were mailed on September the 4th, and we're still sitting here with no ballot.
Oh, well, Louis DeJoy and the Postal Service and that $36,500 that Tillis accepted in campaign contributions from him. Oh, yeah, Jeffrey.
I also live in Orange County. I walked my ballot back. I talked to Orange County people, and one of the interesting things that's worth noting is that because we have a Democratic governor, all of the county boards have one more representative that's a Democrat. So that makes it a little more less concerning in that sense. Also, one thing that occurs in this state, there's always been this talk about, they're going to compare signatures, blah, 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 and all that stuff. Well, it's illegal for them to use a signature as a rejection of a ballot. As long as there's a signature by the voter and a signature of a witness, that ballot's accepted.
Yes.
And so they can't reject it for that reason, which is in other states that can happen. But I know that there's been some confusion about that even in this state. So that can't happen here.
Thank you, Jeffrey. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Our experience in Hillsborough was that it's received by one of the staff, and they basically check it. I mean, by the time it's dropped in the slot, that it's a valid vote.
And you have to log in that you brought the ballot back, or you brought your wives or husbands or kids' ballots in too. So there's that extra.
And Karen notes that the witness, you have to put the address of the witness.
Right, exactly. Yes. Yeah, that but I understand too that if there's a problem at that point, the boards of election are supposed to be doing something about that, not just getting rid of the ballot.
That's right. They will try and reach back to the voter to try and get issues fixed. So that's why it's good to get it in early.
One point is if you do take it back to the board of directors and you're taking other people's ballots as well, look very carefully at whose ballots you're able to deliver. I was amazed to see you can do stepson, da-da-da-da. You cannot do a sister-in-law or a brother-in-law's ballot.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why.
Can you do your wife or your husband?
Yes.
Yes.
I took mine and my wife's into the Durham Board of Elections the other day, and it was very easy. If you get there, I suggest getting there fairly early in the morning though, because I think it's probably going to get pretty crazy as the day goes on, and they're limiting how many people are going in at a time quite a bit.
I'm feeling a blue tsunami, you guys. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
Karen,
Yeah.
I took mine into Durham. They've now got like a tented area where you don't have to go inside. And I took it at 9:00 Friday morning. There was no one there. And yesterday I tracked it and my ballot's been accepted. So they're moving along. The tracking system is really, really good. And did anyone watch Tillis and Cunningham last night?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, because certainly
Yeah.
Tillis is all for the voting, the absentee voting.
I must say that I found that debate between Tillis and Cunningham to be a little disturbing. Cunningham seemed to be less prepared. I was surprised that a trial lawyer was not better prepared, was not more articulate, and he sat there with this silly grin on his face while Tillis was saying these obnoxious things, but didn't follow up the laughing at Tillis with a real statement to say this is what's what's a lie, what's wrong with what you're saying. So the other thing is that I think he needs to really come forward with solid suggestions of what he wants to do and not let Tillis get away with anything. The moderator really was biased toward Tillis, I thought, and gave him much more airtime.
Yes.
Yeah, that was. Okay, there's a couple other things. What?
I have a question for Mark or somebody. I got an absentee ballot, which I had written for ages ago, but I'm also working at the polls here at Carroll Woods, and I've decided I'm going to vote early and not vote the absentee ballot I got. Is that okay?
Yes, just do not mail the absentee ballot. Do not send in your absentee ballot, and you can go in person, no problem.
Thank you. I want to make sure that we bring up a couple other kind of urgent things that have been happening, I think, if it's okay to move on. Are you all paying attention to Mike Caputo? This was on Rachel Maddow last night. Senator Patty Murray has been calling for the urgent resignation of this guy who has a lot of Russian ties and is now the communications director, correct me if I'm wrong, of HHS, which oversees the CDC during a pandemic. He's demanding control. He has no science background. He's not a medical person. He seems to be a Russian agent. That's my opinion, but there is evidence of that. So Patty Murray has been calling for his immediate resignation. And I think it's important that we also call Senators Burr and Tillis and ask them to join with Patty Murray and just every other way we can possibly raise hell. This is totally not okay. Somebody want to sum up what he said? I know you've all been reading about it too.
Well, he's taken over a report, I think it's a daily report that comes out of the CDC, and he has to review it and edit it and change it. And it's a scientific report that he has, he has no qualifications to even look at.
Right. And he also had this rant that like 8,000 people, or maybe it was 800, I don't know, watched on Facebook, talking about how he feels that his life is in danger because he's being attacked by a left-wing mob. And he told his supporters to buy ammunition. This is disturbingly similar to what Roger Stone said, just one day before that. And it is the president's narrative that the left wing, Black Lives Matter, Antifa are the violent people. We know that's not true. We know who the violent people are, but this is a really dangerous narrative that we have to push back on.
There will be violence. They're promoting it.
They want it. They want it. And so we have to be really smart about how we don't give them what they want. And I don't have an answer today, but I think it's something we got to think about every day. And I think it's part of what these George Lakey trainings might help us figure out together as a whole country of resistance.
I would say blow up the phone lines of both senators on this Michael Caputo thing. This is just absolutely frightening.
It's meant damn things.
And Tillis is answering his phone lately a bit. I mean, the staff people are.
Yeah. Did you see what his staff people are saying?
One other point about
Staffer that told the woman that that was too bad if she didn't have health insurance and she had cancer, and tough.
Which really does sum up Tillis's attitude and his policy, both. Yeah, go ahead, Doyle.
Tillis made a lot of points about how many town halls he's had, and Cal needs to really confront that he has not met with his constituents. He wouldn't meet with us. He wouldn't meet with his constituents in general. And it's only pre-election that he's doing all these town halls. He has really been only meeting with donors for his whole term.
They're not town halls either. He's on the telephone, carefully controlling absolutely everything. It's a one-way telephone call. We're not even seeing him. Yeah, I agree with that. It's pathetic. Yeah.
Look, can you hear me?
Yes, Ruth.
Getting back to join with Patty Murray to do what?
To demand the immediate resignation
of
Michael Caputo.
Michael Caputo. Okay.
Or firing of him.
Oh, firing. Right. I'm sorry, Mike. You're right.
Both.
Firing.
No, both. Resign or fire.
Yeah. I think what she was calling for was firing, and I'm really hoping that others join her, because I think what he is talking about was so similar to what Roger Stone was also saying and what the president is ramping up. That's a place where I think we really need to push back.
And also the president is talking this way in his rallies where people are crammed in together. He's talking about armed, he's saying that we want to have armed insurrection, but he's projecting what he wants people to do. He wants these armed racists out on the streets.
Exactly. So to keep pointing out where the violence has been coming from, the violence has been coming from these right-wing terrorists, and the president has suppressed the fact that our intelligence services say that they are the terrorists, the white supremacist people.
You need to do it.
We have to keep pushing back. What else?
There was a
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There was the individual in Portland who was not doing anything but walking back
to his car,
eating a gummy bear, and he was killed by
U.S. Marshals.
By U.S. Marshal. No crime, nothing going on except. And Trump's response was, "Retribution has to be this way."
Right, and that was a political assassination.
Yes,
that was a political assassination, and So then we have these white gunmen who kill people like this 17-year-old and hailed as a hero, and then this guy who is really probably defending himself. So this is what we have to keep pointing out, I think, because. I talked to a Trump voter yesterday, and I realized she's just believing what she's being told, even though there's not a shred of truth in it.
Yes. But that man was not even charged with anything. Supposedly they'd gone to arrest him, but they just shot him in cold blood.
It was a political assassination. Yeah.
By U.S. Marshals.
Yes.
By the state.
Yes. So that's why we're using the F word today.
Yeah.
Fire, get rid of some of these bums.
Yeah, we're going to. I think there's reason to be hopeful about the election, actually. Everybody I know is doing stuff all the time for the election. I think there's a lot of reason to be hopeful. And if you read Heather Cox Richardson, she looks at all this square in the face, but she's still pretty hopeful about what could end up happening if everybody stands up and does the right thing who's capable of it.
I'm just hoping November 3rd weather will be decent. If people have to wait online for hours and it's bitter cold or it's pouring rain.
I bet a lot of people will be willing to do that.
I just hope a whole lot of people have already voted before then.
Yeah, that will help. That will help.
Vote early.
Good news or not, that Bloomberg is giving so much money to Florida and elsewhere.
Yes, that is really good news because Florida is really important. And the other thing that's really cool, and Maple sent something about this, and I've also been following it, is the Florida Circuit Court said that people who've been previously incarcerated couldn't vote until they pay restitution and court costs and fees. But there's a group raising money for them so that all the formerly incarcerated people can pay their fees and vote. And they're about halfway there. So that's pretty exciting. And I'm going to put that link in the tiny letter this week.
Well, what I heard this morning is they don't even know how much these men owe. They cannot find records of how much they owe. So it's a blind deal.
Well, they're going to make it as hard as possible, I'm sure. There's a lot more of us than them. We just have to keep remembering that.
Right. And I'm going to add on to that. Yesterday, a few grannies, social distancing, went to the USPS and sang to the postal workers about all that's going on and that we were supporting them and we are going to vote. And we want the USPS to keep working. And I was really, really thankful that we were able to do that. And USPS postal workers came out and applauded. And there was a little fella that was in the post office while we were singing. He started dancing. So these little things that we are able to do, we are going to keep on doing them because this news is so despairing of all the evilness that is going on. So let us just keep on keeping on. There have been other struggles, and they have been by our Black brothers and sisters. And I hope we can hang and do this, right?
I hope there were a lot of people who were out there by the post office and heard you, that you had a good audience.
Well, we sing when we sing, if there is one, but the postal workers heard it and we were singing for them. And we're not going to trash the post office and privatize it, right?
Yes, it was actually very fulfilling. And people came from the back that were working in the back at the post office and applauded. It was really very worth the trip out there.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Thank you for telling us that. It's so uplifting.
I tried to do something similar. I made a sign that says, "Thank you, postal workers. Your services are vital." And I took it to the big post office and stood there, and 55 delivery trucks went by me on the way to their daily route.
Everybody put a note on your mailbox thanking your mailman for delivering your mail.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great. Yeah, good.
On another subject, does anybody know when to send these postcards out? Can you see it?
I think we're trying to send them out by the end of September since early voting starts October 15th.
Yeah.
Maybe beginning of October.
Okay,
right?
I've got a bunch of them that I'm writing up.
Yeah, a lot of people are working them.
Ruth, it might depend on whether it's a Move On postcard or an NAACP postcard.
It's an indivisible postcard.
Indivisibles, I think, are not expected to go out until October.
No, we're sending them early, Lib. We're sending them early.
Okay. No, we're sending them all out then before the early voting?
before early voting, so people will vote right away when early voting starts.
Sweet, because I wanted to put on the postcard that they could start voting early on October.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, by October. Good question.
I also, depends on which postcard group you're working with. The one I'm working with, the Reclaim Our Vote, I'm told not to send them out except between September 20th and 27th.
The 20th and 27th. Okay.
I think it depends on which.
This is the one that I'm talking about.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, that sounds good.
The ones I'm doing are for Moms Rising, and we send them back to Moms Rising, and they send them out.
Yeah, so isn't it great that we're all doing these postcards for all these different groups? And when we're done with postcards, we can do texting and calling for Reclaim Our Vote, for the Poor People's Campaign. There's going to be plenty to do until the election. You know, they want us to be confused and overwhelmed and paralyzed, and we're just going to refuse to do that. And my favorite comment was by Gloria Steinem, who said, you know, we must be winning if there's this big of a backlash.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really true.
You know, there was another little bit of good news this week when the courts overruled Wisconsin putting the Green Party on the ticket.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a success.
Yeah, but
yes,
I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah, but that usually hurts our votes if the Green Party gets in.
Right. Right.
I don't like
well,
that.
also, the biggest thing, it was going to delay the ballots, but now the ballots can go out. So
they were going to have
another
to
dirty trick.
Do the ballots. Yeah.
Yeah. Another dirty trick that failed.
And no Kanye either.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't follow that.
Follow up on the postcard comments. Those of us who have been writing letters for Vote Forward,
yes.
I was interested yesterday to find out that when I tried to get 40 more, all of the North Carolina voters have been subscribed, have had their letters prepared. So the whole state now has been taken care of. So I switched back to Texas.
But you know what?
Doyle, I was doing it a couple of weeks ago, and it said North Carolina had been taken, and then a week or so later, there were more North Carolina ones. So.
They start a separate series, so you'll see what 2 North Carolinas, 2 Texas. Is the one will finish, and they'll have another as they get more information about voters.
Okay.
Okay. There's one other piece of news that I want to make sure everyone's aware of. Have you seen the news about the whistleblower complaint, a nurse who said that a doctor was doing hysterectomies on people, women in detention, in ICE detention?
I heard that this morning.
Yeah, something to really keep an eye on.
Where did you read that?
I heard it this morning on TV on MSNBC.
Oh, really?
Where was it happening?
At the border.
Yeah, at the border, I think.
Oh, at
yeah,
the border.
there are numerous news articles about it now. So here's another whistleblower complaint, and we'll see what happens to it.
And I think it was in private facilities.
Yeah. In Georgia, Penny says.
Well, in keeping with this kind of horrible oppression, Jan Herman pointed out today is the 57th anniversary of the Birmingham bombing. And so just wanted to say it out loud to pass it as, put it in our hearts, along with the fires.
Speaking of the bombings, Reverend Barber posted that there'll be a program at noon today, along with the AFL-CIO to commemorate the anniversary. And you can get that at Poor People's Campaign live stream.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you. At 2:30, there's a program about the people's bailout that we'll put in the chat.
We have another F word, feminism.
Another F word.
With this story, feminism. With this story about
hysterectomies at the border that we've just heard about.
Feminism.
Oh, yeah.
And Liz had to be put in food insecurity as another F.
Yes, yes.
Another F would be Duke Energy has filed, an F word, their integrated resource plan of how they hope to power North Carolina for the next, I think it's 15 years. So that plan was filed last week. So there's a lot of people looking at it, and they proposed 6 scenarios, though they could propose a lot more, but 5 of them still include natural gas and fossil related fuels. So it's still being looked at, and there'll be a public comment period, hopefully, but eventually you'll be hearing about the IRP, Integrated Resource Plan, and you'll be wanting to make comments on that.
Thank you. Do you have any idea when that will happen, Joe?
I'm not sure when. Probably January is where the public hearing is, but if you go to the Utilities Commission website, you can actually see what Duke filed and the 5 different scenarios and all, if you really want to dive into the energy policy of what Duke hopes to do to North Carolina.
Which isn't good enough, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sure looks like we're going to be doing this in a concentrated way, at least through January, don't you think? At least through January 20th. Yeah.
I wanted to add that there's a very good article in the New York Times about climate refugees. Just if you get a chance to read it as your free article, it's worth it. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.
I agree. It's a really good article.
When was it in? Today?
Yes.
Yes.
Today. Okay. Okay.
Haven't we seen that? Aren't the rainforest burning in Brazil too? Aren't we hearing about South America having fires?
Yes, John talked about that.
Okay, I must have. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any last words before we have the closing song and Susan's closing?
Another F word, fortitude, and we have that.
Fortitude. Yes. Jewel.
There's some people, Elizabeth's iPhone, I don't have your address. If there's anybody who's been coming regularly and not getting an email from me later that day that has the chat box, please put your address, and you want it, please put your address, your email address in the chat box.
Thanks, Jewel. People are putting great things in the chat, and I really want to thank her for sharing the chat every week.
And don't forget.
Hey, I got a suggestion, Karen.
Go ahead, Mike.
I think everybody should tweet out at Mike Bloomberg in part of his $100 million to pay off all the debts of the felons that can't vote because they owe money to the state.
Good.
Let him pay off all those debts.
Right on.
He can afford it. Yes.
Yeah.
And don't forget a very important F word, and that is forward together.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Do we have forever?
Forever.
Forever, ready, willing, and eager to fight.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you so much, Ruth. Okay, we're going to do the song and hear from Susan. Thank you all so much. And thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
So Michael once again came through with some amazing lyrics, and he's going to lead us. Are you there, Michael?
Mike, we can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Is he muted?
Here he is.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go.
Brenda, would you like to do the beginning and I'll take it from November 3rd?
Okay.
Okay. Give me a, oh great. Give me a key.
You don't like who's in there.
Vote him out. That's what election day is all about. The superpower we've got is called the ballot box. And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. Here we go. Vote them out. Vote them out. And when they're gone, we'll sing and dance and shout. Oh, we will. We'll bring some great ones in. They will find us hope again. And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out.
November 3rd will show who's got real clout. We'll resist Trump's throwing things in doubt. We're counting every vote. Send Trump his eviction note. He'll have to go when we say vote him out.
Vote him out. Vote him out. Yeah.
And when
And
they're
when
gone, we'll sing and dance and shout.
Yes, we will.
We'll bring some new ones in. We'll find us hope again. Because we don't like who's in there, we'll vote them out.
And now we know Trump hid the COVID facts. For that alone, he sure deserves the axe. We'll stop this crazy cult, elect a sane adult, and fight like hell to take the Senate back. Oh yeah, vote him out. Vote him out. And when they're gone, we'll sing and dance and shout. Yes, we will. We'll bring some great ones in. They will find us hope again. And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. Michael, take the last line.
Vote 'em out. Vote 'em out.
Vote 'em out.
And when they're gone, we'll sing and dance and shout.
Oh, yes, we will.
We'll bring the great ones in. We'll find that hope again.
Hope again.
We don't like who's in there, vote 'em out together.
And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out.
Thank you all. Thank you all for this uplifting time together. Oh, I hope, like me, you all feel better now than you did at the beginning. So thank you all. I wanted to mention that I'm actually calling in from Philadelphia today. I've been visiting my family, but Philadelphia, first of all, tonight, you know who will be at the Constitution Center speaking, and just the thought of that person speaking at the Constitution Center gets my heart racing. And so I made a point of joining this meeting today and being with you all. But it is encouraging just to be here. My 89-year-old father and my sister here are making phone calls and getting out the vote. So the Pennsylvanians are like us at, such a critical state, but there are many Pennsylvanians who are our colleagues in this struggle. My friends and family here are also, like some of you, tennis fans, and we're so, concentrated on the U.S. Open over the weekend and inspired by these young tennis players. Some of you may have had a chance to watch some of that, but Naomi Osaka and the others who were they just gave the game their heart, but also used that opportunity to lift up the social injustices of our time and are so clear. And this other F word for us, focus. This is so critical. And, like a lot of athletes, these tennis players, it's just that focus. And it reminded me of this speech I read recently, an old speech by Arthur Ashe. Back in 1969, he was awarded this one of 25 outstanding men of the year. He was 25 years old, and he got this award in January of 1969. And he said, by that point, he had already traveled all around the world, Africa, Europe, all over the place. And he said that gave him this perspective of how the world's eyes on our country. And he said, they think we are nuts. They just think we have color TV, we have the Apollo, but then he referenced the bombing in the Birmingham church. And he said, they think we are nuts. But then he said, I will fight for my country. I will die for my country. I will criticize my country when she's going the wrong way. And I will do all I can to steer my country in the right direction. And he said, we have to use our me power and our we power and stay focused. So let's all take a deep breath. We took 3 deep breaths in the beginning. Let's take 3 deep breaths at the end. And just breathe in. We are not afraid to focus on the future of our country. We are not afraid to focus on the future of our planet. We are not afraid to focus on the struggle before us between now and the election. Forward together.
Not one
step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you all.
you.
Thank you.